Hi, Form 1 students. So today we'll be talking about the ancient Greek civilization, just like what we did in the last two lessons. So prepare a topic 10 handout and also a pen with you so that you can write down the answers and jotting some important or useful notes. So in the last two lessons, we talked about the basic features of Greek city-states. That is, in the past, in ancient Greek, there are different cities in the Greek peninsula, but then because of the geographical restrictions, it's hard to make communications. Therefore, independent governments emerged. And these different city-states, they had their own governments, laws, and armies. So they are having a different style of livings. In the last lesson, we compared the two most important, most famous city-states at that time, the Athens and the Sparta. So we spotted some difference, such as the education system, the political system, and so on. And this time we'll be continue to dig deeper into the life in the Greek city-states. So we're going to talk in three aspects: the political aspects, economic aspects, and also the social aspects. So please go to the first part, the part F, life in the Greek city-states, on your notes. And there should have on the first page the political aspect. So first we will be talking about political systems in the ancient Greek city-states at that time. So in the ancient Greek city-states, there are mainly three main forms of government. There are the monarchy, oligarchy, and democracy. So you should remember that a significant example of oligarchy is Sparta. And another significant example for democracy is Athens, because Athens is also regarded as the origin of democracy. And monarchy, Corinth is also an example of a monarchy city-state at that time. Some other examples, Olympia, Rhodes, there are also different political systems, political styles. So basically, some definitions, the basic definitions of these three forms of government. Monarchy means that it's ruled by the kings. King is an absolute ruler, held the absolute power at that time. Oligarchy, so that the people are now not only ruled by one king only, but at this time they're ruled by a group of nobles, ruled of the significant men at that time, powerful, influential men. Finally, for democracy, they're ruled by the common people, and every single man had the right to take part in the political decision-making process. So today, we'll be looking at some of the pros and cons of each political system. Firstly, let's look at the monarchy. So monarchy is still a common and popular political system until the 20th century. So there must have some really attractive point of the monarchy, the system of monarchy. So the people would follow the system for thousands of years. One very significant advantage is that it's a kind of efficient political system because mainly there were not much arguments because the power would be settled on the hands of the king. So every single decision was actually made by the king, and it depends on how open-minded the king is. If the king is tend to be a tyrant, then generally he wouldn't consult any person. But if that king would be a more open-minded king, that means maybe he'll listen to some other people's opinions, but the point is that the system is all the decisions would be decided by the king. So the whole process is a lot more faster because you don't have to ask every person's what involved in this whole proposal or so on. So let's write it down. The good thing about monarchy is that the decisions are made quickly because there are generally fewer arguments to challenge the king. But then the obvious disadvantage of this system is that what about the people? The people being rude. The common people, they didn't have much power at that time. So that the disadvantage of this point is that the common people, they are only obeying the kings. And it was hard for them to express their opinions. Because sometimes if the king is brutal, then you are criticizing, doubting what he has decided would cause you death. So, in a sense, to protect yourself, to make yourself safer from these kind of conflicts, the best decision is keep quiet, not making any opinions on everything related to the politics. And then the second one, the oligarchy. So we learned that in Sparta, there were two kings. However, the power were held in the hands of the generals. So what are the good points of this political system? Firstly, in general speaking, at the beginning of the system, the small group of people are generally to be considered as the experienced people, the capable people at the society at that time. So there were a group of capable leaders, or we call them the elites, there to make the decisions. And this is absolutely good for the government or good for the cities, as the quality and the efficiency would tend to be higher. So you can write down small group of capable leaders, experienced leaders, or we call them the elites. So it's slightly better than monarchy because you can actually see some communications among different people, not just an absolute opinion from the king. But later on, as generations pass by, like what we've seen in the example of Sparta, that the nobles were actually from the same family. So you cannot ensure the quality of every family members. You cannot ensure that every family members are capable, in fact, so that the qualities of these decisions makings would be decreasing. And other point is that when they're generally from the same family of same group of same parties, they're actually having a one-sided opinion. The decisions tend to come from one perspective only. So not all round enough. For example, if a group of people were actually warlike, so they actually made decisions that are actually, for example, declaring war on other countries. Whole group of people would agreeing on it. But what about other parties? Are they not considering other parties' opinions in this sense? So this is one kind of the disadvantage of such political system. Then it comes to the democracy. So democracy is still commonly accepted nowadays, believed to be one of the best political system in nowadays society, in the modern society. The advantage is obvious because different from the two previous political systems, this time the general public, the majority of the society, the common people, they can make decisions. They can take part in the government. People can take part. In the ruling of the government. The important thing is that no matter where you come from, what occupation you are having, your social status, your wealth, it doesn't matter. You only got one vote. Okay, regardless of everything, you only got one vote. So the key word here is regardless their background. Of course, if you're rich enough, then you can bribe other people, but this is another worse. So, okay, background. Okay, background. Then it sounds very good, excellent. Sounds that it's the best. However, and the Greek philosopher Aristotle pointed out that actually the problem of democracy is also very obvious that you can't make sure that every single person are capable to make decisions. In a society, there are different groups of people. Farmers, the majority of Greeks were farmers, maybe they're less educated, and maybe for the scholars. So when it comes to a issue of, let's say, tax reform, farmers would only think of think of themselves. But for scholars, they might be thinking of the whole society. However, at the end, if it comes to voting, the proposal favoring the farmers would always win because farmers are the majority. However, it might not be the best proposal, and there may have a lot of conflicts between different parties because there are different groups of people in the society having their own interests. So there are a lot of arguments. And you are actually unable to ensure that this is the best decision. This is only the decision that is supported by the most people. Arguments exist easily as people are likely to have conflicts of interest. Okay, understand? For example, a famous case of Socrates, who was being charged as poisoning the youth at that time, so he was eventually sentenced to death. But before his sentence to death, he was put into the people's court for judgment. However, the general public at that time didn't really like him. So eventually the voting result is that he should be put to death. He was guilty. But it's obviously isn't the correct decision because he didn't actually do anything harmful to the teenagers. But just that the perception of every people were different. They didn't understand what he was doing, so they eventually put him into a guilty stance. That democracy doesn't mean the best decision in this sense, okay? Then it comes to the economic aspect. So look at the notes. There are three aspects: farming, fishing, and trading. Most ancient Greeks were farmers, as I said. They grew wheat, barley, and one more thing. That is, looking at the PowerPoint, you can see here. You can see the olives. 橄欖. Okay, so right now, here, write it down. Should be olive. So Athens is a city of olives because it was related to a Greek myth. So Athens is named after the goddess of Athena. So at that time there was a competition among the gods for the city. So they're fighting for the city so that they can have the name on their cities. So how did they compete? They actually sent a gift to the people inside the city. Whoever, and eventually they will decide that which one's gift is the best. Then they will give the city to that god. And Athena planted a olive tree in the city. So eventually she won, and the city was then named after Athena, so it became Athens. And olive became a symbol of the city of Athens. So olive is a common plant in the Mediterranean Sea. Secondly, fishing. So you can see here the map here. In between the Aegean Sea and the Mediterranean Sea. It's common easy for fishing and also easy for trading because in ancient Greece, so that you can have different routes into different areas. They can trade with East Asia, Middle East, Egypt, different places. Sea transport for them. Okay, so you can write down here. The ancient Greeks, they fished in the Aegean Sea and the Mediterranean Sea. So you can see on their paintings. And what did they trade for? For example, potteries. They trade with the Egyptians. There are sayings that the kings of the Greek city-states were actually having some trading, some exchange of goods with the Egyptian kings, the pharaohs. So there had long been a trading relationship between Greece and Egypt, the two most influential civilizations in the past. And finally, we've got this social aspect. People living in the ancient Greek society enjoys two very modern types of ideas. That is what we call the rights and duties. 權利與義務. So in a society, when there was a rights and duties, there is a much more easier to be ruling because rights means that the citizens there would enjoy certain level of rights. For example, they can have trading rights, they can buy and sell the things they like. There was slave-free trade, and they are, in a sense, protected by laws. Okay, so slave-free trade was lawful, and they cannot kill people, cannot hurt people. It's just they like, because there were laws. They would be put into the court. They would be punished, to be judged. Okay, so there's some rights, but at the same time there are also some duties. For example, people have to pay taxes. People have to serve in the army. There are some military duties at that time. There's a system that farmers in the ancient Greece, there were farmers when there was harvesting, and then some when it was wartime, they would become the soldiers. So it's a warring system in the Athens, the military system in Athens. They're not necessary for every country to have an army, for every city to have an army, but there were some military system in every city state, so they can protect the country to make sure that the people would enjoy the rights. But when it comes to wars, every citizens also have the responsibility to serve, to fight for the country. However, one very important idea is that the men still earn a higher social status than the women. But this is really a kind of tradition that lasted for thousands of years. And in ancient Greece also, they were having the same ideas that, for example, women were not allowed to vote or take part in the politics. Even in the cities like Athens, and for sure, most of the women were not allowed to be educated. So Sparta was an exceptional case because Sparta is then a city that the women there are enjoying more rights, they're more free than other city-states. But in general, men still had a higher social status. So finally, we can go back to the research exercise. By studying the three aspects of ancient Greek city-states, then we'll have better understanding for some of the concepts, such as a democracy. So what does democracy mean? You can write down. Democracy means that the government should be formed by the common people. Okay, very simple idea, formed by the people. But now how do we make sure that the people were actually recognized or they are authorized to use in process of election? So that we can ensure that the people were representing the whole to give a reasonable opinion. And then the second question, how did the ancient Greeks make a living? That means how did they earn their money? So you can refer to the economic aspects, the three ways for them to earn their money: farming, fishing, and trading. So they grew crops, such as wheat, barley, and olives. And what they also did was that they fished in the Aegean Sea. Also traded things, traded potteries, traded fishings, traded crops among different countries. For richer people, poor people, they couldn't trade also. They can only do some market trading, but they cannot do some cross-country trading, okay? So this comes the end to the topic 10. Okay, so make sure I've written down everything, fill in every single blanks.